living for this bright pink amazing scarf cowl thing. I don't really remember what this kind of thing is called, but a friend of mine recently made this for me. She crocheted it herself, and oh my god, it's keeping me so warm. Oh! Hey everybody on YouTube, welcome to another episode of Witching Through Grad School. This is the planner edition. 'Tis the season to plan. It's January still, barely. We're almost into February, but I wanted to get this out real quick. I'm going to be talking about how I personally mix and match different planner systems according to my needs in that moment and according to what fits my life. So I guess the biggest takeaway for this video is please don't think that you have to force yourself to be loyal to just one system. You can flirt around with different systems and mix and match and see what works for you. So take whatever resonates, leave the rest, and let's get into it. So when it comes to planners and scheduling and figuring out your life as a graduate student, you have to sit down and think about all the different aspects of your life that need organization. For example, if you have children, you need to take that into consideration, especially if your kids are old enough to be involved in extracurricular activities, like does so-and-so have soccer practice every Tuesday and Thursday, and does so-and-so have swim practice, and does so-and-so have debate team practice, and figuring all that out. You might choose to go with something like a Google Calendar that is shareable, an electronic calendar, so you and your partner or you and the other parent of your children can work out that schedule. So you have to figure out the different aspects of your life that might need organization and planning. Your children aspect of your life, your self-care aspect of your life, and yes, I'm calling this an independent kind of aspect of your life because it is so important. I'll get into that later about scheduling time for self-care on the daily. Your work aspect of your life, if you work outside of academia while at the same time you're studying or working on your master's degree or your PhD or whatever the case may be, you need a schedule for that. Or you might feel you need a schedule for that. And of course your academic work. And so first things first is I'm a categories and kind of organizational person. That's like the left side of my brain kind of jumping in. When it comes to planning and organizing, my left side of my brain is just so happy for that. So I like to divide my life into different bubbles. So I have my self-care bubble, I have my graduate student bubble, I have my online presence as a content creator, as the StudentWitch bubble, and I try to figure out what is the best way for me to keep all of these bubbles happy and moving and fluid and working for me. So that might be step one for you. Step two is figuring out what are the planner systems that work best for you, or what are the different combinations of planner and scheduling systems that work for you. Basically, when it comes to the planning world, you got the electronic planning systems, or things like iCal, Google Calendar, or you have the old-fashioned pen and paper planning systems, and I combine both. So I have on my phone Google Calendar. My particular situation is of course going to be different from yours. So my situation is that I'm not currently working. I don't have a job out in the real world, but I'm not teaching or anything like that in academia. I'm just doing research. Whew, and I'm so privileged and thankful for that. I know not a lot of people have that opportunity to do something like that. Actually, just a year ago, I was working 3 jobs at the same time that I was trying to make progress on my program, so I get it. It can be hard. So I use Google Calendar as a way to record what my ideal schedule looks like. And I include in my Google Calendar time for cooking because not only do I enjoy cooking, but you know, it's a necessary thing you gotta do. And I also consider cooking as part of my self-care regimen because I do enjoy it so much. It's almost like a creative outlet for me. So I schedule in time 3 times a week to cook our meals because we do reheat leftovers, and my partner takes leftovers for his lunch when he goes on campus to teach. So time for cooking, time for the gym, time for yoga, even though I haven't made my yoga class yet this year. I am going tomorrow, damn it, it's every Tuesday at 6:30. So things like that. I kind of record my ideal schedule, and then I compare that to my day-to-day life to see what is working. For example, originally in my Google Calendar, time for cooking, I had Sundays and Mondays allotted. I had like a 2-hour chunk of time on Sunday afternoon and on Monday morning to cook the meals that we're going to eat throughout the week. Well, now I'm finding that I would like to cook an extra third meal just to have a little bit more variety, so I'm going to switch that up. I'm actually going to cook Saturdays and Sundays, and then again on Thursday. So, since I can see what is actually working in my everyday life, and I can compare it to my ideal work schedule on my calendar, I can switch that up and keep modifying and comparing as the year progresses. So that is how I personally use Google Calendar. I love Google Calendar because you can share it. I know a lot of professors, and I mean so many people use Google Calendar for that reason, to schedule their meetings with their students, their office hours, to make sure that different events and different meetings don't overlap, to make sure they don't overschedule themselves. So an electronic, what I'm going to call an electronic calendar like that, might be something worth looking into, especially if you have, if you're juggling multiple bubbles in your life, what I was talking about earlier, those spheres or bubbles of your life, and you need to share those with other people to make sure you don't overschedule yourself. When it comes to analog, old school paper planning, I know there are a lot of options out there of kind of pre-made planners, like the Danielle Laporte, or, well, the names are escaping me, but the different type of planners that are already set up for you. But I personally prefer something like a bullet journal. This is my bullet journal up in the corner here. I'll have my recent 2019 bullet journal setup walkthrough for my work journal specifically. I have one video that I think I published last week, 10 days ago, I'm not really sure, but I have one video for my work bullet journal and then another one separate for my witchy bullet journal. So I'll have the work bullet journal one pop up in the cards here. But I love the bullet journal system because you can really cater it to your specific needs, to your life. Because I found that for all the kind of prefabricated or already set up planners out there, there's always something about the setup or something about the weekly spreads or whatever that I just knew I wasn't going to use, or it would just end up being empty space. So I like the bullet journal. It serves as a creative outlet for me as well. I can cater it to my life, and I think bullet journals are so popular at this point, I don't think I need to define them. Just Google bullet journal and you'll find a whole plethora of explanations on Google and on YouTube, on the internet I should say, and on YouTube as to what a bullet journal is. But it is an excellent resource for tracking your progress, for keeping up with daily tasks, for tracking your self-care and all of that fun stuff. So, kind of in combination with my bullet journal, I use something called the 12-week year, and this is the book for the 12-week year by Brian Moran and Michael Lennington. 12-week year, get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. It's a New York Times bestseller. So I found out about the 12-week year, I think toward the end of 2017. Yeah, it was at the end of 2017. I was just randomly listening to a video by Joanna DeVoe, and she was talking about how she was focusing on her relationship with Saturn, Saturn being a planet of structure and restrictions, right? And she mentioned the 12-week year as part of her journey with Saturn, right? And it piqued my interest. I did a little digging, and then I ended up buying a copy of this book for myself. I read it very quickly. It's not a very dense book. It's written in very plain English, and honestly, the first few chapters especially are kind of redundant. I feel like the author, I mean, this system and the authors who created this system specifically come from the world of business. I think that's where they've gained their fame and where this method is really popular. So in the first few chapters, they kind of, to me, it sounds like they're repeating themselves a lot, but I think it's because they're trying to sell you on their idea. So, you know, you don't have to make very detailed notes until you get to the juicy bits where they kind of break down exactly how the system works. And basically, the 12-week year is just that. You take a 12-week chunk of time. It doesn't mean that you need to divide every year into a set of 4 12-week years, but you take a 12-week chunk of time and you tell yourself, okay, I have goal A, B, and C. And I would really keep it to 3, maybe 4 goals max. You don't want to overdo it. And then every week you allot yourself at least a 3 consecutive hour chunk of time to work on each one of your goals. So, for example, my current goals are to write the first chapter of my dissertation, to do significant amount of research for the next chapter that I'm going to write, and to be able to run 1 mile. So I have 2 research-based goals and then a self-care goal, or just a goal that I want to do because it's been probably over a decade since I've been able to run a mile straight without stopping and falling over. So it's just something I want to test myself and like prove to myself that I can do it as a way to boost my confidence and show that I can complete these tasks. So every week I try, don't always make it, but I try to go to the gym 3 times a week, and I usually walk 2 miles on a treadmill, but now I'm going to start slowly incrementing the amount that I jog on the treadmill. So I'll start with 1/4 of a mile, and then 1/2 a mile, and then 3/4 of a mile, and eventually build myself up over the period of 12 weeks to be able to run 1 mile. Same thing with research. I schedule, or try to schedule, a 3-hour chunk of time to organize and finish up the research for the chapter I want to write during this 12-week period or 12-week year. And then for the other goal, I try to schedule and commit to a 3-hour chunk of time every week to make significant research progress on putting together the next chapter that I'm going to write. So it's really helpful to use the 12-week year when necessary. Like I said when I was kind of introducing this idea, you don't necessarily need to do 4 like boom, boom, boom 12-week years in a row unless you got a lot going on and this is a major like hardcore year for you. You don't necessarily need to be that intense. I use the 12-week year when necessary for me, in the sense that I'm about to move abroad. I got a lot of stuff going on. I need to be focused. So I use this as a tool to get a lot done in a short period of time. This current 12-week year that I'm in ends the week of March 25th, I think is the last week. And so I'm really taking advantage of the focus that this method gives you to get a lot done, because I need to get a lot done. And then I'll probably take a break, and I might do another set of 12 weeks or another 12-week year later on in the year when I might need to get a kickstart on the next chapter that I might try to write. So you think about 2, 3, 4 max goals that you would like to get done and that are feasible that you think you can get done within a 12-week period, and then you divide it into each individual week and you tell yourself what you're going to do each week to meet that goal. It's incredibly helpful. Let me show you. I'm currently in week 4 of my 12-week year, and every week for my weekly spread in my bullet journal, so this is the week of January 28th through February 3rd, because my weeks start on Monday for me. That's just how I do it. You'll see here is a little space for my weekly spreads where I break down what am I going to do this week to meet my goals. So a 3-hour chunk of time for preparing chapter 2, which is the first chapter I'm going to write. A 3-hour chunk of time for chapter 1. Yoga class twice a week, because that's part of my I just don't want to injure myself or like sprain something, so I try to do yoga as I'm trying to train myself to be able to run a mile. And then walk 2 miles at the gym. And then you score yourself. And it's really important to be honest with your score to just motivate you. They talk a little bit about that in their book about really scoring yourself, and as a way to kind of light a little fire under your butt to make sure that you show up and do the work that you say you're going to do. So the 12-week year might be a little intense for some people, but it is a really useful tool. Just make sure that the tool doesn't become an obsession or an excuse to beat yourself up for not meeting your goals, because I'm still very much at the beginning-ish of this dissertation process, and I'm finding out more and more every day that sometimes things don't go according to plan. Sometimes your advisor takes 2 months to give you feedback on something when you only expected them to take 1 month, and that pushes your schedule back an extra month. Or sometimes you have to put research aside because you got so much other stuff going on. So, and this leads me to self-care. Don't let planning feed into shadowy stuff, which is something I'm guilty of. I set up all these goals and what I think are realistic expectations, but then life gets in the way and scheduling gets mixed up, and research has to be put aside a little bit for a few weeks sometimes because you have other stuff that need to get done. So don't beat yourself up if you don't exactly meet your goals. But it is important to be organized and to use a system, whether it's a 12-week year or some other system that works for you, to be able to hold yourself accountable, to try your best to do your work. Because as my dad always used to say, whenever I had an anxiety moment when I was growing up and I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to do everything and I was afraid that I wasn't going to be good enough, he used to always tell me, Rachel, do your best because that's all you can do. That's like my mantra for surviving this dissertation process. Do your best because that's all you can do. Anyway, so self-care is vitally important. And I just want to end this video highlighting the importance of self-care. You need to schedule, well, don't take my word for it, but I would highly encourage you to remember to try to schedule in time, ideally daily, for self-care, because when you're juggling so many things, and one of those things is a big, huge dissertation or a master's thesis or exams or whatever you got going on, it's easy to let self-care slide to the back burner because you have so many deadlines and the pressure is on and you have to perform, and it can bog you down. Like, I've been there. I've been burnt out like a crisp by grad school, by academia. It's just, ugh. Academia can also be a very toxic environment and toxic place too. So self-care, even if that's just 5 minutes, like for example, every morning I've established this routine, and my spiritual practice to me is part of kind of my greater self-care work, right? Every morning, usually right after breakfast, I go to my altar and I light up some candles, some tea lights, which I use as an offering to the different entities or what have you that I work with. I light some incense and I carry the incense into every room in my house, and I just say thank you. Thank you, bed, for giving me a place to rest and sleep. Thank you, front door. My front door I've kind of created into like a symbol of clearing out blockages and stuff. So anyway, I go around. That'll be a different video for a different day. But I go around to every room in my house and I thank it. And I say, you are blessed. Thank you for blessing me. And then I go and I burn some incense outside and I thank the area where our apartment is, and I thank that for giving us a place to call home. And that whole ritual, lighting the candles and walking around the house and walking around a little bit outside on the patio, burning incense, takes 5 minutes. But it is so, it's like hitting a reset button. It's like programming your day from a place of self-care, from a spiritual place, from a balanced place, from a place where you feel safe and protected by your guides or whatever you work with, right? So you can have a good start to your day. Something as simple as that. I think a lot of people, when they hear self-care, or we've been fed this idea that self-care is taking bubble baths and getting mani-pedis and treating yourself to expensive restaurant food and all this, but self-care is something deeper and more important than that. So I actually, in my bullet journal, and let me show you really quick and I'll end it here, I promise, I track my self-care. I also track the activities that I would like to do less of. So here's my tracker for February, and up here I have all the activities that I consider self-care: taking my vitamins, doing my spiritual practice every morning, doing a quick 10 to 15 minute meditation, going to the gym, doing yoga, reading, pleasure reading, which it can be hard to find time to do when you're doing so much academic reading. Beauty routine, which to me, my beauty routine is just washing my face and then using the different like oils and creams and stuff that I use on my face every once in a while, stuff like that. And then things that I would like to kind of track and reduce would be social media. I actually deleted the Facebook app from my phone recently and I just feel so liberated. So that might be something to consider. Alcohol, eating out too often, things like that. So another reason to consider or think about tracking your habits in something like a planner or a bullet journal or even on an electronic calendar. So yeah, I use Google Calendar, bullet journal, and the 12-week year as my magical combination. It works for me. It might not work for you, but please consider this permission from the universe to explore your options and to mix and match and find what works for you and your busy life and your busy schedule. And please remember to schedule in time for self-care every day. Every day. Otherwise, this academia and grad school will whittle you down to the bone. So, yes, that is how I kind of try to establish some order to the chaos. Comment below, let me know what is your magical combination of different planning systems. Like, how do you organize your life? And of course, everything I'm saying in this video, it's not only going to apply to people in academia or in grad school. You know, this, I think a lot of people are busy with their jobs, with their families, with their studies, with their online presence, what have you. And so everybody's going to have a different combination and a different system that works for them. And it's really important to share, just so that everybody sees what their options are. So, share below. I'm curious to see what everybody does. And until next time, many blessings. Bye.